Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. Back in our first season, Russell and Alan had quite the entertaining chat with Marshall Trimble. He's an author, songwriter, storyteller, performer, cowboy, college prof, and Arizona's own state historian. It was such a bunch of fun to speak with him then that we're going to replay that episode for you now.
Hello, Alan. Good to see you today. I guess when you're ranchers, like we are and have been, you try and have a routine, but of course the unexpected blows it up more often than it doesn't, I guess.
Well, the unexpected is the expected in ranching. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we always said flexibility and a positive mental attitude. Flexibility is the key to a positive mental attitude in dude ranching, and I think you need to be. Not a routine life. But our guest today, Marshall Trimble, he's lived anything but a routine life. He's an American author, singer, former community college professor. He's the Arizona official historian, in addition to his position as director of the Southwest Studies at Scottsdale Community College. Of course, he's a popular speaker. He's True West Magazine. We always talk about True West Magazine. It's question and answer man. And he's probably even got some Bob Bosbell stories. Welcome to our podcast, Marshall.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here. We're kind of you just have to imagine what everybody looks like.
Yeah, well, old worn out cowboys, if that's what you could envision. Yeah. That's us. Hey, I was really excited when I heard you were going to join us. Our paths have crossed a bunch of times over the years, and always nicely. And I'm just some people call you the Will Rogers of Arizona, and I think rightly so.
There's a story behind that, and it wasn't so complimentary, but I decided to jump on it anyway.
Well, we want to hear the story now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I haven't told it in a long time, so it gets better every time.
But, those are the good kind.
So, in other words, this will be the best.
I was going to go down and be on KTAR radio with Pat McMahon. Everybody knows Pat McMahon in Arizona anyway, and he had a morning talk show, and I was all excited about it because I think it's only maybe the first or second time I'd been on the radio back then. And so I turned on the radio at the time as I was driving into Phoenix, and it said, we're going to have Marshall Trimble is going to be our next guest here on the next hour, and he is the Will Rogers of Arizona. And I thought, wow, he just called me the Will Rogers of Arizona. And I thought, man, that's a pretty good handle. And my dad was a big admirer of Will Rogers, and so I grew up listening to him tell stories about Will Rogers. And if he wanted to give me some advice, he would always say, Will Rogers says, and he'd quote something, I think it was his own quote, but he attributed it to Will Rogers because he knew he'd get my attention that way. And so when I got down to the station and we were on a first break, I said, Pat, that was really good. Pat's another crazy Irishman, and I said that was really good. Will Rogers of Arizona, and I said, man, I don't deserve that though. I was false modesty. Said, I know you don't. But if we said we're going to have a Marshall Trimble, he's a historian, on the next hour, they would have all switched to that other station. So that sure took the wind out of my sails. But I decided after I thought about it, I said that's still a pretty good thing. So, but Pat McMahon's the one that started all that, and I just capitalized on it.
What drug you into the Arizona history, the Dean of Arizona? What drug you into that?
Well, there were several things. I was a folk singer back in the 60s, in the folk revival period, and was on the road a lot around Arizona and Nevada and Northern California and Colorado and just playing in places and you playing in the bars, not in the coffee houses. And people would invite you out the next day, show you some of the country. And I'd never been hardly anywhere. I'd just come from Ash Fork, Arizona, and I really hadn't traveled a lot. But to me, going to New Mexico was like going back east. And so I was having all this fun and going into mining towns in Nevada and up in the Sierra and and ranches up in Springerville and helping out on the roundups, and then playing in the bars at night, and it was just a great time. I started getting really interested in Western history, and especially Arizona, and so then fast forward to 4 or 5 years, and I was still kind of in my lost years, I guess, and I went up to Montana with my brother. He was going to vet school, and we hired out on a ranch to drive a herd up to Miles City, where the railroad was. And I thought, man, this is. I looked at it was just looking like you were looking at an old Charlie Russell painting. And so on the way back, we were stopping along the way here and there, and just foot loose and fancy free. And we stopped in this little town and threw our saddles in a motel room and thought we'd go out and have a good time, but there was nobody else out having a good time, so the only light on in Hardin, Montana was a museum. So we went inside this museum, and this little old lady just took a liking to us and started telling us some funny. She said, "You know where you are, don't you?" And I said, "No, you're right. You're right a few miles from Custer's Last Stand." And I said, "Well, I know that's Errol Flynn, wasn't it?" And that's about all I knew about Custer. And so anyway, the next day she said, "You guys you're going on your way to Sheridan. Why don't you just stop off there? And there's not much out there this time of the year, just a little light snow falling, and see the place." Well, I did. And I wandered off by myself and looked at where all those monument crosses are, where they found soldiers from the 7th Cav, and something I swear something came over me. It was like something took over me, and I driving on down to Sheridan. I woke up my brother; he was asleep, and I was driving the truck. And I said, "Hey, I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to be a Western historian," and that's where it all started.
That's a great story. Fun what motivates various people, and that was just a wonderful story. Let's move on for just a little bit. Your latest book is Arizona Oddities, Land of Anomalies and Tamales. Did I say that right? That's a great title.
Anomalies and Tamales.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I used a line like that a lot of my appearances. I've said, Arizona's a land of anomalies and tamales, and it was kind of like another one. Adopted some of my dad's. He was a Texas. He was from San Antonio, Texas, and he would he'd say, it always rains after a dry spell. And that was one of his favorites, and it was the other one was never give a heifer a bum steer. So I thought I wrote a book, and I didn't know what to name it, so I called it Always Rains After a Dry Spell, because I had a lot of stories in there about how dry it is here in Arizona. and say it was so dry the bushes followed the dogs around, and that kind of thing. And so I gave it the name. I named it that, and then I wrote another one, and I had a good friend who was a former student of mine who was an artist, commercial artist, and I had him draw a picture of a cow looking at a lame bull, and said, "Never give a heifer a bum steer." And so that was the title of the next book. So this one just turned out to be. I wanted to call it a land of anomalies and tamales, and just make that the title. But they wanted to call it Arizona Oddities, then colon a land of anomalies and tamales, and that worked out well. The cover's good, and it's kind of book once you put down, you just can't pick up again.
You're full of that. I love it. Well, how many books have you written, Marshall?
About I think 26.
Holy Moses! Well, let me ask you
less
this:
than 30, but
you've been a teacher and a writer. Which direction is your favorite? Would you rather teach or write?
I love to teach people, and I think that's what I was really meant to do. And other things just kind of fell into place. I tried some other things, tried several other things, and was a total flop. I wasn't even that good a folk singer. But
Well,
anyway, I just as Gail Gardner used to say, the guitar was always off key for my singing.
well, it's
So I don't know. I've had so many things I love to do, but I'd love to be behind the microphone and talking to a group, whether you're doing and seeing little light bulbs go off over their heads, things they didn't know, and that's always I still like to do that, and I can do that with True West Magazine too. But I get lots of nice responses from the readers about when you answer a question, and there's lots of stories. But I just about it. But one wrote me the other day, and he wanted to know he saw the end of a movie, and it showed Poston's Butte, which is down by Florence, and he said, he lives back east now, but he said, I lived in Florence for a long time, and I got to know the name of that movie. And I thought, well, how am I supposed to know that? It was just on the closing script, the credits, and then I got to thinking. He gave me a clue. It was Charlie Myers, who was a famous justice of the peace and a druggist in Tucson from about 1850 to about 1900, and it was at Poston's Butte, and I thought, and he mentioned something else about performing marriages, and that's all I needed to know, because I remember down in Tubac, Charles Poston was there in the 1850s, and he was the alcalde there, and the magistrate of the town and superintendent of the mine. And when these couples would come up, these old miners came up first to work out of Mexico, and then when there was a whole slew of single women looking for husbands, and they just came up to Tubac also, and none of them had enough money to get married to pay the priest, so so Charlie would marry him as a magistrate. And then the archbishop over in New Mexico and Santa Fe found out about it, and he wanted to. He sent a priest over here to check it out if the rumors were true that some gringo over there was marrying the couples, and so he came over and he saw, and he immediately declared all the marriages in Tubac null and void.
Wow.
Married.
wow.
So we got a real dilemma here, especially the women, and some of them were already had families, and so Poston, in his own words, Poston, by the way, is what we call the father of Arizona, and nothing to do with that, but he was he got to thinking that he and the priest got together and he said, you've really got a lot of unhappy people on your hands here. And they agreed if Poston would give a large contribution to the church, the priest would remarry them all. And so they remarried them all together in a mass wedding that day. And that's what the movie was about. And I knew the story. And so I started checking on the internet, and there it was, Death Valley Days.
I'll be darned.
I was watching
Wow.
Death Valley Days, and that story was on there, and Robert Taylor was playing the role of Poston. I don't remember who played the role of Judge Myers there, but it was based on a true story, loosely based on a true story, because yes, it did happen down in Tubac, but Judge Myers wasn't there.
Well, that all brings up a quick story from my part. I'm not even supposed to do this, but here goes. Our Roundup cook, Bug Quinn, got elected as Justice of the Peace one time in Duncan. But his main thing that he always said is he would never marry anybody because he didn't believe that he could give a life sentence.
Yeah. That's a cowboy philosopher.
Yeah, it sure was.
Well, Marshall, this Russell, we've talked a few times on our show about how life takes these unexpected paths, and I love the story about the lights on in the museum and the lady sends you over to the battlefield. And, it's kind of a special place for me. My dad was raised in Montana, and our last trip together when we went to apply for the Dude Ranchers membership was in Montana, and we went through that battlefield, and that was 30 plus years ago, and it's still really a powerful memory for me, and I could see where it would change your life path, because what they've done there is pretty powerful, and it just quietly moves you. And then there's a Dude Ranch story.
If you don't believe in ghosts, you sure will out there.
Yeah.
Especially if there are no tourists around.
Yeah, we were pretty alone. I mean, there were some folks there. It was summer. But there's a Dude Ranch story that connects to it. Is the original Dude Ranch, in most people's view, is now called E10S, and they started out with a cattle ranch in the Dakota territories near what is now called Medora. There wasn't a Medora then, and they called it Custer Trail Ranch because one story says that his trail into the Bighorn went through it. One says he camped on the ranch. But either way, they called their ranch the Custer Trail Dude Ranch, or Custer Trail Ranch, because it was originally a cattle ranch. And then they started collecting money on insistence from their guests in 1891 and became the first Dude Ranch to do so. And when you think about it, it's not not that much time after Custer's defeat at the Little Bighorn. So,
Sure, yeah.
It's kind of an interesting connection to that. What are some of your favorite spots in Arizona? Back to Arizona.
Well, that's like asking a little lady that lived in a shoe which one of her kids was her favorite. I have a cabin up at Christopher Creek, and when I'm up there, I'm just in heaven, just sitting out there on the porch and hoping to see a deer or a javelina or something go by.
Where's Christopher Creek?
It's east of Payson, about 20 miles east of Payson,
Okay.
up by Cole's Ranch, just before you make the long climb up to the top of the rim.
Oh, yeah.
The Muggy-on Rim there. But I love Montana, too. I tell you, I've been up there many times. I was up there not too long ago. I was doing Legends and Lies with Bill O'Reilly's,
Right.
That Bill O'Reilly film, and been up there for the interview, and we were up in the Bitterroots. And my brother and I spent a whole summer in the Bitterroot Valley one time, and mostly riding up into the mountains. Just as soon as you got past horse flies, you got into the deer flies. I mean, they were just waiting for you. And but it was a beautiful country. But the West, the whole West, especially the Rocky Mountains, just fascinates me. I have no desire to. I've been from deep into Mexico, all the way to Canada. But the prettiest places I've ever seen are right in the Four Corners area, in those San Juan mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really God's country. It just takes your breath away. And but any place where where you're just alone with nature, it seems to be it's heaven to me. Where there's nobody around, just you maybe, and just maybe a dog if you got one, and
yeah,
I don't know. I got a lot of favorites. The Chiricahua Mountains. I worked for a trail ride outfit for many years, and about 10 years, a fellow named Don Donnelly had a horse outfit, riding outfit out in Apache Junction, and we rode in Monument Valley and Canyon de Chelly. We go up there for a whole week at a time, and camp out and ride. And once I went up, spent a whole week with Ben Johnson. And I was working on a story for Arizona Highways magazine, and Ben was. It turned out to be Ben's last ride.
Wow. Marshall, we got to take a break right now, buddy. We'll be right back.
All right.
How's your holiday gift giving stacking up? Looking for that special something for the reader of horse books, adventure books, memoir, or good old-fashioned inspiring stories? We got you covered. Check out Alan Day's award-winning memoir, The Horse Lover, A Cowboy's Quest to Save the Wild Mustangs, and his collection of short stories, Cowboy Up, Life Lessons from Lazy Bee. In fact, our guest today, Marshall Trimble, writes, Alan Day's short stories reflect on the everyday life of the cowboy better than anything I've ever read. They're good old, honest stories of ranch life, told by a man who lived it for more than 50 years on Arizona's historic Lazy Bee Ranch. Both The Horse Lover and Cowboy Up are available from online retailers and wherever books are sold. For more information, visit Alan's website at alandayauthor.com. That's ALAN dayauthor.com.
After months of seclusion, are you craving sunshine, spacious views, bird song, space for your children to play outdoors and be free, cheerful companionship, maybe a lovely home-cooked meal prepared by someone else? My name is Mary Miller, and I'm here today to tell you how you can enjoy these experiences and many more. My family runs a dude ranch called Elkhorn Ranch near Tucson, Arizona. Dude ranches, also known as guest ranches, are a unique vacation destination where families truly take in friends. You'll find that horseback riding is the core of your vacation experience at a dude ranch, but there's much more, and you'll find amazing combinations of activities at dozens of ranches. If you've never been on a horse, you'll find patient-friendly wranglers who are ready to teach you and keep you safe. We are a proud member of a great organization called the Dude Ranchers Association. And here in Arizona, where I live and work, we also have an Arizona Dude Ranchers Association. I recommend that you visit these organizations' websites to learn more and find the perfect ranch for you or your family. Here's the information you need to find us. For the national organization, duderanch.com. And then for the Arizona organization, AZDRA.org. That stands for Arizona Dude Ranchers Association. So I really hope that you'll get ready to find the perfect place to ride, rest, and rejuvenate yourself. You won't regret it. So once again, I'll give you those websites. The National Dude Ranchers Association is at duderanch.com. And here in Arizona, you can find us at AZDRA.org, the Arizona Dude Ranchers Association. So we hope you'll saddle up, you'll find a spot where you can ride year-round at one of these ranches.
Well, we kind of finished up talking about Don Donnelly, and I never met him, but you know, we're in kind of, as a dude rancher, I'm kind of in a peripheral business, and he was a legend.
Right.
But then you also talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I've been down to your ranch with True West magazine about 2-3 years ago. I was True Westerner of the Year, and we spent the night down there.
Yeah, no, I remember. In fact, Alan and I were talking that you'd won that award when you were here, and I was going to bring it up, but got sidetracked by all the good stories. But you know, Doug McClure, if you remember, he was Trampus in the Virginian, and he was here as a guest, and I may have told this story before, but at the time he was here, he had started out his life as a cowboy in Nevada and then ended up in L.A. playing beach volleyball and got discovered and was made a cowboy in the movies. And when he was here, he spent a lot of time with us down at the corral, and he wasn't that old, but he was actually sadly nearing the end of his life. But he was seriously criticizing the state of cowboys in TV and movies at the time, and specifically targeting young guns and young riders. But the point is, and where this comes back around, is his hero was Ben Johnson. And he said, you know, Ben Johnson, he's the real deal. And I go to all Ben Johnson's rodeos, and I rope with Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson was clearly a very big deal to Doug McClure. You have any Ben Johnson stories?
Oh, yeah. Well, we slept in the same tent. They had we bunked together for about for a whole week, and he sure does snore loud. I took my bedroll and walked out one night, and I thought I'm gonna roll out just out here in the sand somewhere. This is Monument Valley has a lot of sand, and so I could find a place. And I lay down, I crawled into that bedroll, and all I could still hear him snore. But my favorite one was down in the Chiricahuas. We were doing one with Donnelly's outfit, and Ben and I we entered. There was a barrel race, and one of my wives was a barrel racer, so I just not at the same time.
Glad you clarified that.
Got to watch out. And so anyway, we ran the barrels, and Ben finished first, and I finished second. And they gave me the red ribbon and gave Ben the blue ribbon. And so I took a marking pen when I got home, and I wrote on this, this is only second place, but first place was one and only Ben Johnson. And it's on that ribbon. I still got that ribbon, that red ribbon for second place. And so, anyway, he could tell more stories. He was a great storyteller. And he was just like, you know, around the campfire, he was just like he was in the movies. And, I think I probably pretty much saw all of his movies. And the Last Picture Show was one of my favorites, because that reminded me of my own hometown, Ash Fork, and in the same time period. It was the same time period.
That was a classic.
Go ahead.
What are you, change the setting just a little bit. What do you think are your favorite Arizona anecdotes about the state, you know, of events or people or things that happen that will stand out to you?
Well, the one I get asked the most about, and especially through True West magazine, is the gunfight near the OK Corral. And people are just fascinated with that story, and of course the movie. But you know, speaking of that, I get more questions today from people who don't know the real West, and they take it all from what they saw on these reruns, these television shows that they stream now. And their questions are, they'll ask about Gunsmoke. And I had one wanted to know how many people did Miss Kitty kill? And I don't think she did. Anybody? She broke a lot of hearts, probably, but she didn't kill anybody. And but I get some crazy. I get some really funny questions out of that too. Just from people, but they just seem to glean all of their knowledge. And I think, boy, you ought to, there are so many great books out there, and just get lost in a good book, a good nonfiction book on Arizona, and just even if it's the gunfight at OK Corral. And I'm reading one right now by Eduardo Pagan, and it's called The Valley of the Guns, and it's on the Pleasant Valley War.
Oh, really?
And I just finished it last night, and boy, it's a great book. I wrote Eduardo. We'd done some things together for television shows on the Pleasant Valley War, and so I wrote him just last night after I finished the book, and told him how much he really did a good job. So if you get a chance, take a look at that Valley of the Guns. Great name too, great title.
Well, I have to bring you back to the shootout near the OK Corral because one of our dude ranches
behind
is
the OK Corral or
behind somewhere in the neighborhood of. So we have a dude ranch down there called Tombstone Monument, and so we're kind of tombstone focused. And a couple of weeks ago, and if you've spent time in Tombstone, I'll digress for a minute. You know that the people today still argue about that. And, I'll sit there and, you got the Clanton and McClowry contingent and then the Earp contingent, and they'll argue it like it was yesterday. But anyway, so 2 weeks ago, one of our guests, he definitely views it was murder in the streets of Tombstone. Clantons and McClowrys were the victims and the Earps were the bad guys. And I've read quite a bit, and I guess I'm the other side. Nothing's ever as clear as we want it to be, but I'd love your opinion.
Yeah, well, I was October 26th, 1981. I was invited to go down by the newspaper Arizona Republic to go down with a reporter and a photographer, and it was the 100th anniversary of the gunfight, and so they set up a debate between me and another fella, and they said, and in a debate, I said, you know what, because I took the Earp side, and I still take the Earp side. They were there to try to bring some law and order, and these guys were actually rustling cattle and terrorizing, robbing stagecoaches and stealing cattle in Mexico. And then when the Mexicans tightened it up, they started stealing from the ranchers in Arizona. And I come from ranching background, family in Texas, and those are hairy banknotes. You guys, cows are stealing. You guys know that, and so I just thought these guys had terrorized the town of Tombstone at the time. People were afraid to even stand up to them. Well, anyway, I closed my debate argument. My closing argument was all of the Earps were shot in the back, and all of the victims of the Earps were shot in the front. I rest my case.
That's a pretty persuasive argument right there.
Yeah, and I still remember that because at the time I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I had read a few books, but I had never. When I went to work writing for True West magazine and attending, and I'm a vice president of the Wild West History Association, and the places we go every year, somewhere in the West we have a conference, and I've learned so much from hanging out with these authors, these great authors, people I've admired all my life ever since I first got into all this stuff, and now I'm sitting down having a glass of wine with them, and asking them questions and so forth, and it's just but that was really my introduction to that, and all the movies, and even the 1993 the movie with Kurt Russell, they didn't get it right. They got a lot of it right, but they got a lot of it wrong, and it hasn't. There was one guy Kevin Jarre was going to try to tell it the way it really happened, and it movie would have probably run 6 hours. It's really complicated.
Yep.
And
I
tell people when I'm telling a story about it that it was the Law and Order group against the Lawless and Disorder group, but it was more complicated than that because it was Republicans versus Democrats.
Well, yeah, we haven't decided that one yet, have we?
That pretty well covers it.
Who to you is the most influential Arizonan? How, from your perspective, name a name if you can.
Would that be a politician or?
I hope not.
Or not a politician.
Well, anybody actually, just somebody that you think is.
I'm pretty apolitical. I have good friends, both sides, but gosh, let me think now.
That's a tough one. It really is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it really is because we have homegrown so many outstanding people. I tell people when I close my show a lot of times when Arizona became a state in 1912 that they said this that there when I guess it was when I'm trying to remember what it was. Somebody said back they thought we were really a bunch of hillbillies and troublemakers and radical crazies out here because Arizona's it's an independent population. We think for ourselves, and they said it'll be at least 100 years before Arizona sends somebody to Washington who will make a difference. 100 years, they said, and all that same year, 1912, we sent Carl Hayden to Washington, and after that we sent Ernest W. McFarland, the father of the GI Bill, just a country judge from Florence, and after that we sent Barry Goldwater, and after that we sent Mo Udall and Stuart Udall, the two Udall brothers, and last but not least, we sent Sandra Day O'Connor. And
I'll cheer for that one.
That was all within 100 years. So that's that was always my finish when I'm talking about great people that from an outsider's viewpoint, because they just thought we were they didn't know. But Sandra even said she talked about growing up on a ranch, and one of the things she said was it taught you responsibility, and Alan, your book talked about that too. The responsibility you had, and growing up on a ranch, you had to do those chores, and you had to make sure those cows and the horses got fed, and the stock was taken care of, and you just grew up with that kind of thing, and I think I think she attributed a lot of just that to the kind of person she was, and I'm not saying this because you're there, Alan, but I've always said she was one of the greatest of all of the Supreme Court justices, and that is because the main reason is because she didn't tell you, she didn't have a side you could predict. She studied each thing and analyzed it, and she made up her own mind. Most of those people on the high court, which way they're going to vote before they even hear the issue.
Well,
and she was not that way.
I know she appreciates your good wishes to her, and I'll express them for her. But
please do, because I hadn't seen her, and I did a little program over there where she was. It's been about 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we had lunch together, and and it was just, I have so many wonderful memories of her.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but our time has actually expired and then a little bit, but it's been one of the biggest treats that we've had to have you here on the show, and you are just an Arizona icon, and we both are just tickled to death to be able to talk to you today.
And
it's been my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Well, and it's important that people know, because they're going to want to follow up on some of these books, and they can find out about you and your books at www.marshalltrimble.com. Just, am I right in it's just spelled as your name, MarshallTrimble.com?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, let's say we're going to sell 100,000 books for you.
Listed on there.
I hope we do.
Well, it's Christmas time. It's a cheap Christmas present, so.
That's great.
And a good one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy holidays to you.
My pleasure.
Marshall.
My pleasure to all of you.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody. It's Stephen True from the White Stallion Ranch. Thank you for listening to the Cowboy Up podcast. It's only a week until Christmas now, and all the decorations are up, and the ranch is looking fantastic. As usual, it is sunny and about 75 degrees, so everybody is riding and participating in their activities in their shirt sleeves. We're also starting to get ready for the New Year's celebration, which is always a great time. We'd love to celebrate Christmas with you or ring in the new year. Give the office a call at 520-297-0252 or go to our website, whitestallion.com. Once again, that's 520-297-0252 or whitestallion.com.
Hey, thanks for tuning in today. And thank you to the talented Stan Houston production team for making this episode possible. Love animals great and small? Next week, the Cowboys chat with Dr. Christine Staton, a veterinarian with all sorts of animal stories, and some interesting thoughts on the future of the practice of veterinary medicine. Give us a follow on Apple, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast platform to keep up with our weekly episodes. And until we meet again, I'm Lynn Weezy Sneed, reminding you to sit tall and ride safe.